Hope you like this. If you do, give it a thumbs up and leave any comments below. And remember to subscribe to the channel to be kept up to date on all my hypnotic bedtime stories. So I hope you enjoy the story.
So as you listen to me tell you this bedtime story, you can begin to drift comfortably asleep. And I don't know whether you'll drift comfortably asleep more with the words I use, with the sound of my voice, or with the spaces between my words. And as you fall asleep comfortably, I'll just tell this story in the background. And so while you fall asleep, just take a moment to close your eyes and listen to me telling this story. And you can have a sense of being out on a boat, and you're miles out to sea, looking forward to going down under the water in a submarine. And as night time sets in, so you can be sitting on the deck of the boat, feeling the gentle sway of the boat with the waves, gazing up at the stars in the sky, noticing whether the moon's in the sky, and if it is, just noticing what the moon looks like. Is it a full moon, half moon? How much of the moon is visible? And noticing those stars, how they twinkle. How when you get absorbed gazing at the stars, silence seems to set in as you become one with those stars, almost like nothing else matters as you gaze at those stars, feeling the gentle sway of the boat on the water, hearing the slight lapping of that water against the sides of the boat, drifting, floating in a sleepy kind of way. Waiting for the time to be right to go down in the submarine. And then you can enter the submarine, and you're looking forward to your journey underwater. You're exploring for something you're sure is there, but no one has ever seen it. And so you enter your submarine that's like a giant glass ball. And it lowers down into the water, and you can hear the splosh as it hits the water, and see that water rising up around until it rises up above you, and then the stars become wavy, and then gradually they disappear as you go deeper under the water. And you can hear the ping, ping, ping of the submarine. Scanning the environment as it lowers down deeper and deeper underwater. And you've heard about something, a legend, that only once every 100 years appears And by your calculations, now is the time. And you go down lower and lower. And above you is darkness, and around you is darkness. And occasionally you see flashes of light that you know to be different fish, different sea creatures swimming around. And patches of light that you know to be certain algae and certain other small organisms that glow with the movement of the water. And you go deeper and deeper, and it really takes its time to go deeper underwater. And all you can do while you go deeper and deeper is wait and relax. Just waiting and relaxing, going deeper and more relaxed with the experience. And then once you reach the bottom, so you begin to steer forwards, and you hear the motor kick in as your submarine steers forward. And all you can see beneath you in the lights of the submarine is almost like snow. It's like a white sandy bottom to the ocean that gets churned up a little bit as you drive the sub forward just above the bottom of the ocean. And you can hear the sonar picking up the sound of a cliff face in front of you as you get closer and closer to that cliff. And then you can notice that cliff face, that although everything looks dark, the cliff face looks slightly darker than the background darkness. So you can just about make out that there's something there. And you get closer and closer and you look at your coordinates and you keep following along. And then you see an arch in the cliff face. And it looks like an archway that's just perhaps carved in the cliff face with water flowing through it. But there's something different about it, a different texture. And you drive your submarine through that archway, hoping that this is the sign you were looking for. And as you pass through the archway, you see the most incredible thing. That you're now in what seems like shallow water. You can notice that above you, you can see light and the surface of the water, and yet just a moment ago you couldn't. And it looks like that surface and that light is just above the height of the archway. And the water here is lighter than it was, as if it's shallower water. And you don't know how that could be, but you know that's kind of what you thought it might be. And so you rise up to the surface inside this archway. And as the submarine breaks the surface, so that water slides off the sub each side, creating a sploshing sound. And the submarine starts bobbing on that water. And you can see light that's like daylight, that's as bright as a sunny day. And yet there's no sun, it's just a diffuse light coming from all directions above you. As if there's a sky but no sun, and no clouds. And you power the submarine over to the shore. You open the top of the submarine and climb out on top, and you attach the submarine to the side, hooking it in place, making sure it'll be here when you need it, when you leave here. And then you jump onto the shore to start exploring. And you see what looks almost like glass, blue, crystal buildings, like a vast city. With towers to rival anything you've seen before, that look like they're made out of these huge shards of glass or blue crystals. And you see what look like people, but they're pale, incredibly pale. And one of them comes over to you and somehow telepathically communicates ideas straight into your mind. And it doesn't feel like a language as such, just a communication of ideas straight into your mind. And when you think things, they respond to it as if you've just communicated ideas straight into their mind, as if somehow you can communicate with each other. And they seem incredibly friendly. And they take you from where you landed and moored up. Along a white path. Towards what seems to be crystal paths or glass paths, where everything seems to be made out of glass or crystal. And nearly everything seems to be with a blue tinge. And you touch the glass and notice how smooth that feels under your fingers. And the person starts telling you about this civilization. About how they formed. about how they first created this underground world, about how it's created above ground initially, and then over millennia. The ground has very slowly moved. Over millennia, tides have risen and fallen, and currently tides have risen to a point where they're shut off from the outside world. But they're an ancient race. And so in their time scales, this is just a temporary period. They're an ancient race where each being is millions of years old, where there's only been about 4 generations since the beginning of Earth time, where they arrived here. With the oldest beings being over 1 billion years old. And they talked about how they don't reproduce until they're near the end of their life. And then as one dies, another one is born. They talk about how they helped to start life on Earth. They saw the beginning of life. And you follow them around, you follow them up into one of the vast palaces. And you notice this isn't just like a small, tiny city. From inside the palace, gazing out of a window high up in the palace, you can notice that as far as you can see, these beings exist. As far as you can see, there are properties they live in. That their land goes on. And they tell you about how once every 100 years or so, their entrances to their land become accessible. That the entrances phase in and out of reality as we would know it. And the rate of phase shift means they come into reality as we would know it, once every 100 years or so, for a period of time that to them is less than a blink of an eye. But to humans, it's a few days, and then the wavelengths gradually go out of sync again, and won't be back in sync for another 100 years. And that's how that entrance was able to be open on this night. And so you explore this area. You get taught about some of their secrets, about their desire for peace, for creating life, for creating consciousness and seeing growth, feeling that creating life is the best gift they could ever give, that they had the ability to create life, and they then let that life lead its own life. And just from some simple instructions, over their lifetime, they watch how that life evolves, how those simple instructions get used on a world. To see what occurs. And then, with a thought, you present the idea that you would like to check out other areas, and you want to know how large is this underground world. And the idea comes back to you that it's as large as the overground world. But that the entire thing is in its own phase shift. And so the two realities, as it were, only present themselves in the same location at that once every 100-year cycle. The rest of the time they're just an observer on our world, and we have no access to see their world. And they present the idea to you to go exploring, to make the most of this opportunity. And then you get this idea, jump. And you think, you must have misthought it. They kind of gestured from the top of the tower, this idea of jump. And you thought, well, I'm not going to jump from the top of a tower. And the idea was presented to you of comfort and safety and trust, and that you should trust. And so you trust them. And you find yourself floating off the ground slightly. And you realize that somehow in this land, people have greater ability and control over themselves. And that the laws of physics are slightly different to the laws of physics in the reality you've come from. And you and this being fly out the window, fly out from that palace, and fly and explore the land, having that feeling of weightlessness, drifting, floating, comfort, exploring. And then you land down in what's like a village centre. And the way everyone's milling around and just getting some food and just doing everyday things reminds you of like a medieval village. And yet, this isn't a medieval village. Somehow they have greater mental capacity and capabilities. Somehow this entire land is different to the reality you're used to. And there's a deep sense of peace here. And there's a sense of silence, that it's only when someone directs an idea to you that you almost hear their voice in your mind, or your interpretation of their voice as your mind interprets their ideas. When someone's buying something, you can see that they're presenting ideas to the person they're buying from. You can see that person's presenting ideas back, but you can't hear a single word. Not even in your mind, because those ideas aren't in sync with your mind. They're in sync with each other, with the two communicating to each other. And you notice something about the communication of ideas, how when minds sync up, they communicate ideas with each other that unsynced minds don't pick up on, and that the syncing happens on both sides. So this seems like a very silent world, just the sound of people moving around, or these beings moving around. Like the sound in a shopping mall without the sound of speech. As if everyone's shopping in silence. So you can hear footsteps, movement of things. And you can see vast open spaces that are like fields. And it's like they have an entire community. You don't know where the light comes from in this area, but it's almost like somehow this whole land is contained within an electromagnetic bubble. And maybe the electromagnetic bubble somehow conveys light. That just lights everything up as if it's daylight, but without any sunlight anywhere. And after taking time to explore, you present the idea that it's time you go back to your ship, because you know this place is going to disappear. And you know this place isn't going to be back for another 100 years, and that by then you'll be long gone. And you hope that a future descendant comes and revisits and follows in your footsteps. And you take some learning, some deep learning from ideas presented about peace, love, change, curiosity and wonder, and healing and well-being, and you find your way back to your submarine. And your host and a small gathering of others stand on the shore, looking peaceful and friendly at you as your submarine lowers down into the water, leaves back the way it came, and finds its way back to the boat.